All right, everybody. My name is Pablo with FFL Fortitude, and I'm excited to be interviewing today Hall of Fame producer Marisa Maggio. Welcome today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited for the call.
Well, I'm excited to ask you some questions because being a Hall of Fame producer takes a special type of work ethic, right? And there's a lot of people on here who are seasoned agents, and a lot of people on here who are brand new agents, and they don't really know what it takes. Some of them don't even know exactly what it is that they're still doing because they're still just getting started. So to be able to hear someone like you, who's been in the industry for some time, and hear a little bit about your experience and what it took to get to Hall of Fame producer is very exciting for a lot of these people because they get to experience exactly what it was like for you on your journey. So welcome to the call, and let's get right to it. So first off, Marisa, how long have you been in the insurance industry, and exactly how did you get your start?
That's my favorite question. And I say that because the way I got into the industry was kind of abnormal at the time to a point. Pablo, I had just graduated college. I graduated with a double major in, business, economics, and a minor in philosophy. So kind of a little bit of different, everything kind of blended in there. And when I graduated, I felt like, I just did 4 years of school. Like, mind you, like it's 4 years, right? I had this big entitlement hat on. I was like, I deserve to be out there making, a million a year because I went to college for 4 years and did what everybody else does, right? And the reality of that was, I went home, Pablo, one night and I literally started crying to my sister, Christina, who's also in business now. And I was like, I'm a loser, I'm still serving. And I had just graduated like 2 weeks before that. And she's like, hey, like, she didn't really know what to say. She just kind of looked at me and was like, good night. So I applied to some jobs online, of which I didn't know one was, life insurance, just because of the way it was advertised, if you will. When I went in, it wasn't Family First Life. It was my practice company, if you will. And I saw the opportunity to be able to help people, but also the opportunity for income potential and kind of that up and up uncapped income potential was really attractive to me. And I wasn't, one thing I knew about myself at that point in time, I was a really hard worker. Like I wasn't scared to work hard. Like I will work 18-hour shifts, serving, bartending, and like wake up and go to class. And I was like, let's do this thing because that's what I was used to. So I had lost my mom my junior year in college and kind of pivoting into the life insurance industry. Now I sit into this interview. It's kind of an overview of, who the company is and what they do. And I'm like, all right, I'm in. So I went, got my license, got started at that practice company. And what I will say, that now this is back in August of 2015, which is crazy to think about. So 8 years ago, I got my license. To be clear, just in case anybody on here has failed the exam, I like got straight A's through high school and college, and I failed that thing 4 times. Like I know it's not that hard. You probably won't fail it 4 times, but if you do, if you fail it once, just get back up, take it again in 24 hours, right? But with that, I essentially went and got started with the company. And in that company, I found that it was really important that I was always uncomfortable. And like oftentimes I would come home, I'd be like, I'd get back in my car, I'd be like, that was a really uncomfortable day. But it was like the next day it just got a little bit easier and a little bit easier. And through that is, me being actually 20 years old at that time, realizing like you just have to get a little bit uncomfortable and it's gonna feel that much better in the long-term gratification. That was key for me. So then coming into the IMO world, if you will, I was with the prior IMO before Family First Life, and I've now been with Family First Life for about 4 years. And I'm really thankful and happy here. What I realized in my practice company, Pablo, was there was a lot of people at the top making a lot of money. But the people who were at the bottom, if you will, the agents, the managers, the field trainers, those people weren't making, in my opinion, what they should have been making for the work that they were putting in. So when I saw different exposures, because you don't know what you don't know, to different opportunities, it kind of just started to wake me up. And I was like, okay, like this makes sense, right? So that's kind of how I got into the IMO world and kind of into the industry.
Okay. And then, so being in the industry in 2020 was when you hit Hall of Fame. Was that your first time helping 400 families in that 1 year in any given year?
It was. So it was my first time helping 400 families here at Family First Life. And I guess the thing I'm most proud about is at that time, Family First Life was predominantly, boots on the ground, face to face, even through the pandemic. So getting through the pandemic, not exposing myself or anybody else, to the best of my knowledge and belief, and being out there helping people, like there wasn't a better time to do it. It was just so rewarding and fulfilling. And if we can bring ourselves back to that, I think that we can always bring ourselves back to just that true place of like, we want to serve and help people, because in our hearts, if we don't want to do that, it's going to make this, job, if you view it that way, a heck of a lot harder, or this business a heck of a lot harder.
Then prior to that, what was the highest number of families that you had helped in a given year?
Yeah, so this is something that a lot of people that are close to me will brag on me a little bit about. I'm usually somewhere in like this like 300 families to like 375 families, and so it's usually right about Hall of Fame numbers. So prior to that, my largest year was with a different IMO, and with that IMO, I was number one in the company, although my bank account did not look like it. And I had helped that year at that company 414 families. So I pretty much sit right around that range.
So what clicked? So you said you had been hitting about 350, 375. What clicked for you? How did you get past that number? How did you finally hit 400 in a given year and then it just all clicked for you?
Yeah, I think that, we once we do it, it's like, okay, this is what it was and this is what it was. But until we do it, we're like, oh, that's what people are saying. But here's the most common thing you're going to hear people say, and you could probably agree with this, Pablo, is like, in order to hit Hall of Fame, you have to change something that you're doing, right? So if you're usually helping, 20 families in a given month, that's not going to give you Hall of Fame numbers. Now, if you say, I'm just going to work the phones a little bit harder, I respect that, but it's still not going to get you Hall of Fame numbers. You got to up your lead flow. Now, that's the thing, like almost like nobody wants to hear, right? Like I'll never forget, I got a call, and it's my upline. They're like, hey, like turn on these retro leads. But this was a game. This is literally what was pivotal for me. It was turn on these retro leads. At the time, retro mortgage, they were like 90 bucks a pop. And I was like, yeah, I'll turn them on. Then like I got a call, like, did you turn them on? I was like, no, I'm gonna send the email. I'm gonna send it later. They're like, send it now. They're like, the counties are gonna get locked out. I was nervous. I was like, they cost $90 each. What if I still can't sell insurance, even though it's like all these crazy thoughts. But the biggest thing for me was when you put those leads in front of you and you're paying $90 a lead or you're paying X dollars a lead, it doesn't really matter what that amount is. You're going to work that much harder than if, Pablo, you hand me a stack of leads and you don't know me and you're like, here you go, work these. Like I might work them like they were free, right? Because they were free for me. But like when you put actual your skin in the game, it's like it's not a game anymore. Now it's
Oh,
like I just invested, $1,000, $500. Like I'm gonna work, I'm gonna get that back, and I'm gonna get a really solid return while I'm at it. So I think being able to realize, hey, if you invest more in leads, by default, you're just going to write more and you're going to have the proper appointment count. So you're not going to leave the office and be like, well, the next 2 days, I really hope these 4 people are home, right? Because that doesn't work long-term strategy wise. So that's the biggest thing I hit on, was really not playing around with my leads, not messing around with my schedule whatsoever, and just kind of shifting and molding that when I needed to. And that honestly, it sounds so simple, but when your mindset can keep it on, it's these couple simple things. Know the phone script, keep your mindset sharp, buy your leads, and plug in. Like it's not that deep anymore. You just have to keep doing it.
you mentioned that was pivotal for you to turn on the retro leads. At that time, did you know what retro mortgage was?
So at that time, I was explained it on that same day in like 5 minutes what retro mortgage was. Now I wasn't opposed to it. I was like, that sounds great. Like, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it was like I needed more leads, and my upline knew that. So it was like, hey, if this is the lead they're recommending, I know my upline wants me to do well. Why wouldn't they? Right? Like that's applicable to anybody listening to this. So it's like being able to say, again, whether it was a retro mortgage lead, Pablo, or it was a new Facebook campaign, I just needed leads. So at that point, it helped me realize, hey, the more money you spend on leads, truly, the bigger your return is going to be. Because during that time, I was the person, I remember, I was really close with Eric Schmidt. We were both worked out in Connecticut a lot together. And Eric had just got started. He was like brand new, he was killing it, like just loved being around him, great environment. And what I remember thinking one night, like this is how like I was like, there's no way Eric helps 60 families in a month. Like people can't do that. No one can help 60 families. Now everyone's like helping 60 families in a month. But at that time, there weren't that many people doing it. So I realized there was something wrong on with me internally, when I started saying to myself, Eric has to be writing his friends and family. That's why he's writing. That's why he's helping 60 families a month. There's no way he's helping 60 families a month. It's like, there is a way. He was just working and he had more leads than me. He was working harder than me. He was more consistent than me and he had more leads than me. Right. So it's like when I realized that and I actually got the leads in my hands, Pablo, it was like, okay, this is all Eric was doing. Right. It was like, my bad, Eric, like, love you. Right. But at the same time, it helped me realize, like, hey, truly, you need to just invest more into leads and you're going to get more out of
That's just the secret sauce, right? More leads
them.
equals
Exactly.
more opportunities. That's it. Everybody thinks it's always some type of special lead somewhere, and no, that's not the case. The more skin you
Yeah.
got in the game, you're gonna work for it.
Amen. And it does not take us, there's no special lead, just in case anybody wants to know. Like, I've been in the industry since 2015. I haven't found the special lead. So if anybody does, call me, but there's no special lead.
You and me both. All right, let's talk about your schedule. As far as your schedule is concerned, what did it look like for you during that Hall of Fame run?
Yeah, so I think what's really important is, we have so many different avenues as just independent agents in terms of being able to plug into a dial team or being able to get into an office or whatever that looks like for you. But what was really important for me, I could not focus at my house. Like, just wasn't on the table. I would be like doing the laundry for the eighth time that day. Like, oh no, we gotta wash that blanket again. Like, I was wasting my own time, right? So what my schedule looked like was exactly what that traditional, family first life schedule looked like. Dialing on Mondays to set up Tuesday and Wednesday, dialing on Thursday to set up Friday and Saturday. Now, with that, what I had to be really intentional about is I'm not somebody that would say, hey, Pablo, hypothetically, like you can't, like if I'm talking to you as my agent, right? Like I can't tell you what you can and can't do, right? Like only you're gonna dictate that. But I'm not gonna tell you you can't take off a Saturday. Take off the Saturday, right? But what you else you can do if you're saying, hey, I still want to hit my goal, it's like then work the Sunday, right? So oftentimes what I would do if I had a family event, a friend's birthday party on that Saturday, I would run Friday and Sunday because you got to maneuver the schedule around. We have enough space, if you will, to make that happen. You just have to want to make it happen. You have to want to work on the Sunday. You have to be willing to work on the Sunday. If you're not working on the Saturday, that's your day off, right? So maneuvering things around and getting really intentional on Mondays and Thursdays about making sure when I left the office, bare minimum, I had 16 appointments for the next 2 days because I knew with those 16, I was going to see success. If I didn't have 16, I literally would not leave the office until 9:30. It's like 16 or you can't leave.
Then some people take that for granted because I mean we have that flexibility, we have that flexibility to maneuver and work around. So taking advantage and just sticking to the fact that you're working 6 days out of the 7 in order for you to hit your goals. But if you need to take a Saturday, work that Sunday, that's people tend to forget about that, right? Like that there is flexibility here.
Right.
Okay, cool. Now, that Hall of Fame run that you had, was that all in person? Because you mentioned dialing on Mondays for Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then dialing on Thursdays for Fridays and Saturdays. That doesn't sound like phone sales. That sounds like face to face.
Yes. So I was 100% face to face. That was through the pandemic too, guys. Like people did not want me at their house. Like it was like, hey Pablo, I'm gonna give you a call when I get there. If you and your wife could just come out, give me a quick wave, I'll give you a wave back, and we're gonna jump on the phone in the car. Right? Like sounds so silly, but guys, you got to figure out whatever's going to work for you is going to work for you. And like that worked for me. You know what I mean? So 100% face to face through the pandemic. And I think that also just says like, hey, if you think like you can't get into somebody's like home, you're like, who's going to let me in their house? Like, and like, that's your mind. Like, please lose that because more people are going to let you in their house to talk about life insurance, especially in the beginning, than are going to pick up the phone and you're going to be able to have a full out conversation for an hour that you might need as the agent being new about life insurance. So
Right. That's right. And have you transitioned to over the phone?
yeah, so more recently in the past couple of weeks, I have transitioned to more of a Zoom and telesale model. Definitely different, but I'm enjoying the process for sure.
And it is totally different process. So with that being said, really quick, I want to ask, what's some advice that you can give to any new agent that's just starting out there on whether they should start in the field or should they start on the phones? Because I know everybody now is the cool, sexy model is over the phone, working from home in your pajamas. But the reality is that, in my opinion, this is someone who comes from experience in the field. It's not as easy, in my opinion. I think it's easier, in person. But what kind of advice would you have for any new agent on whether or not they should start in the field or over the phone?
Yeah, what I would say, is I would agree that it's definitely not as easy over the phone as it is face to face. And what I would start and say first and foremost is we want to know our clientele, right? Like until you get out there and you're actually working around the people, aka the leads you're dialing on, those are all families, right? And you see the communities that they live in, you see, like what they actually do for work. You see that the husband isn't get home till 7:30. Like you see that the wife is a homemaker. You get to see all these different things, and it allows you to understand like the psychology behind that person, behind that demographic, if you will. And you may even be a part, so to say, of that demographic. Like for me, I was like, okay, like cool, like these are like people, like this is like my friend's mom, like you know what I mean? Like that's how I kind of had to envision it in the beginning to get comfortable going into a house. But here's what I know is if I didn't get into my first 100 homes, I don't know that I would be able to truthfully say like, oh, like I would have crushed it on telesales if I came in, in 2015 and I only had that option, so to say. I don't think I would have. And it's because when you are in front of people, you have a lot of different options, so to say. You can call somebody from the home for help, like your upline, like you can reach out for help. People are going to give you more grace with the application, right? You get somebody decline, no big deal. We're going to go in this direction. Whereas on the phone, sometimes you're like in a rush, right? They're like, well, I got to go in 3 minutes. And you're like, oh, and you're like trying to, right? You're like, what's the verification code, right? You're like trying to read off all the disclosures. So it's like, you might think you're doing yourself a favor by saying, I'm going to start on the phones. But again, to each their own, you're probably not. Like truthfully, get into the first 100 homes, learn your clients, learn the demographic, learn the lingo, if you will, learn your language. You're going to talk in your own words, lingo, language when you first get started. And those first 100 homes, they're also going to help you as an independent contractor truly dictate, do I want to be on the phone 6 days a week? Or do I want to be on the phones 2 days a week and sitting in front of people 4? Like, right, which one do I want to do? Or do I want to do a little bit of both, right? As long as it's structured, you can do that. But I truthfully do not think you can make like an educated decision on that until you go into at least 100 people's homes. And also, you're going to get a lot more confident as the agent. And I think that that's really important. I know for my first 100 homes, Pablo, if I didn't call like, after the home, like I would call my manager and be like, so my last 20 appointments, this is what happened. It's like, okay, why didn't you call me 20 appointments ago, right? But at the same time, those things are what actually embedded into me, things like matching and mirroring, which are still applicable on the phone. But they're a lot easier cues if you're going in, you're meeting your clientele, you're talking to them, and you have a room for error. On the phone, there's a very small margin of error, right? Like you call somebody's child the wrong name once, which by the way, you shouldn't do at home either, but they'll give you some grace in home. On the phone, they're gonna click, like, they're done. So I would say, like kind of that's what my advice would be there is get in front of some people, be able to truly pick your model and get that exposure, but do it fast. Like do it fast. Like fail fast. Like we are all bad at this in the beginning. I don't care who you are. If you weren't bad at it in the beginning, you're going to be bad at it at some point. Like I love you, wishing you the best, but that's just the reality of it. Like do bad fast. Get into your first 100 homes, not in 100 days. Like do it in 30, right? Like you can be like, I don't want to go in home for a whole year. Well, you shouldn't have to go in home for a whole year to get in front of 100 people, right? Like you should only have to go in home for maybe a month. right? And if you hate it and you're like, I want to kill this telesale thing, do it. But you might realize, wow, I really actually like this one. That's my feedback.
It's a painful process when you move slow with this business.
Very,
Um,
very.
for sure. And so, okay, so now let's talk about, obviously you have an agency and you're growing your agency. What kind of expectations do you set for all the new agents that are getting started with you? And how do you set them for them as far as expectations are concerned?
I think it's really important in the beginning when we're getting to know that agent, so to say, that we know kind of where they're at. One thing that I struggled with in the beginning, just in this industry, generally speaking, was whatever my goals were, I assumed that those were going to be that agent's goals, right? So if I wanted to help 50 families a month and, help 10 new agents get started, I assumed that everybody I brought on, they wanted to do the same thing. Now, through having conversations with your agent about time expectations that they can put towards this. If somebody tells me, if me and you are talking, Pablo, and you say, well, I'm working another full-time job, but I want to get this started. I respect that. That's cool. That's awesome. But I'm going to just flat out ask you, how many hours do you have to put, to life insurance? And if you tell me, well, maybe 10 a week, and you want to make, you want to help 10 families a week, I'm going to flat out tell you that's not doable, Pablo. Like that's not a realistic expectation. So I think showing people the good, the bad, the indifferent from the beginning is really important. But on the agent's end too, and I always express this, as they're getting started, even if you're in pre-licensing, like get onto the calls. You're going to learn the lingo that much faster. You're going to learn the phone script that much faster. You're going to learn what not to say. Get onto live dials. It's like a cheat code, right? Like it's like you get to be on live dials while at the same time you're going through your licensing. So you hear the kickback. And by the way, anybody on the phone is going to get kickback rebuttals. Even if Sean might pick the phone up today, he's going to get some, right? Like that's the point of the phone. But the quicker you can pick that phone up and you're able to actually plug into to what we're doing in the business, because my biggest point, Pablo, to my new agents is if you don't understand what we're doing in the business, you're not just going to start understanding it the day that you decide to plug in. Like the day that you're like, this is the day I get started. Versus if you're already plugging into the dial teams, you've heard people dial out, right? You're listening to the training, you're plugging into the team call. Plug into those things and show up, because those are the things that show me, especially in 2023, like that you're plugged in and you're dialing, or like you're not. And I'm going to tell you from the jump, like if you're not plugged in, like I'm not going to ignore you if you call me, but I'm not going to drop everything I'm doing if you call me either. Now, as an example, if Heather Coletti on my team calls me, like I'm answering the phone, whether I'm, having a family emergency, I'm in an appointment, because I know she's showing up. So I know whatever she's calling about is important, right? And it's like when we can have those types of relationships, that's when we're going to see growth. When we're growing with people that want to actually grow themselves, you're going to automatic by default grow in this business. So really what I'm looking for is coachability, willingness to fail, and willingness to take direction. I mean, I think they all kind of coincide together. And with that, you're usually able to make kind of the perfect storm, if you will. So
I love that you say that, because sometimes you get agents who come in not fully committed. They'll log in once in a while, they'll dial for a day, and then I didn't protect 10 families this week. I was like, well, it's going to take more than that. First off, number two, as far as being someone who's sponsoring and helping and coaching agents, you also want to see where their level of commitment is, right? And I'm glad that you touched on that, because you are going to answer the phone to those who are showing you that they're committed to the process, that they do want to grow, right? That's who you want to work with. So with that being said, let's go back to what the activity levels look like for you currently. At the moment, what does your current lead flow typically look like? Are you working only mortgage, final expense, retro leads, internet leads? What does it look like for you?
So I'm really big on like the lead flow you come in with is not the lead flow you should have in 6 months. And it's going to almost always be like, you're always going to have a new lead that you're putting in there or taking out, right? So what my lead flow looks like to date, so to say, I do drop mail. So I do drop new mortgage mail. I do have on some old BPLs, nothing crazy. I have IVR leads on, so those are like mortgage, call-in leads. And I do get a lot of Facebook final expense lead. That's what I've been kind of using this telesale model to, play around with, so to say. And so it's been fun. And then also just making sure, hey, if my lead counts are not where I need them to be for my numbers, I'm just going to get stuff out of the ILC. Because what I know about ILC leads is they're always typically going to be there, right? Especially if you're doing telesales, you can pick them up in another state, county, whatever it might be. And they're very hit or miss, right? Like I'm not scared to call, like as long as you're not scared to call people and get rejection, you shouldn't be scared. Like you, and by the way, if you are, like I love you, but you should probably not be in this business. It's going to be really, really difficult for you. So I think that having diversified leads is important. So I'm really big on lead spend. Obviously, again, it did not look like this when I walked in the door to Family First Life, 4 years ago. But my lead spend is mortgage mail, IVRs being dropped, Facebook final expense predominantly, and ILC. And that's really what I'm going through. So kind of a little bit of everything works.
What is a mortgage IVR, if you don't mind touching on that?
Yeah, so really what that means is, essentially the new homeowner, or maybe it was, a refi or whatever, the loan modification may have been, they'll receive a form in the mail and it will say, important information about your mortgage on 123 Main Street in Malden with, ABC Loan Company for 300,000. Call this phone number for more information. Now, when, Pablo picks up the phone, he calls that phone number, it's going to say, this is about, a low cost mortgage protection program you have access to, in the event that you were to die or become sick, it will help your family or yourself. Now, please enter your age, and you enter, 25 years old. Are you a smoker? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. They're pressing the prompt. Any major health concerns? Do you have a co-borrower? Confirm your phone number. Now, that's what an IVR lead is. So it's like a call-in mortgage lead. Some people are going to complete it. They're going to answer all the questions like their age, smoking status, health. Do they have a co-borrower? Other people are not going to complete the whole thing, and that's okay too, because you're going to have the number they called you off of, and you're just given a call back. So it's just very nonchalant. But I like those because you kind of have the completed ones and the incompleted ones. And you'd actually be surprised how many of the incompleted ones actually already filled out a mortgage mailer. So not to get too confusing with the IVR, but what I like about them, Pablo, is more often than not, they're beating the mailer back to the agent. Does that make sense? Because they're
That's
just
snail
calling
mail.
right in.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And more
Exactly.
people are tech savvy. So it's like, oh, I'm not going to mail it back when I can just call in, right?
Right. And that also just shows the value of kind of both sides, right? Of telesales and face to face, right? Like they both work. They both work. So
Right. So touching on that really quick, and I just kind of want to touch on that mortgage protection IVR leads. Are you doing one call closes? Or are you booking appointments for Zoom and telesales? And I ask this question because there's a lot of agents that always ask, should I go for a one call close, right? On mortgage protection, you're spending some money on those. And they try to do one call closes. And then there's some agents who rather just book the appointment and then set that appointment. So since you've recently transitioned over to Zoom telesales, what is your approach with those? How are you working those?
yeah, so it was definitely interesting in the beginning because I kind of felt the same. I'm like, do I one call close them? Do I book the appointment? Do I make it on Zoom? Like, and what I was really doing was I was making it so confusing, Pablo, that by the time you got off the phone, you were like, what did she just talk about? Like, and I was booking it like off for Zoom. So guys, what I would say, I do still book out for Zoom. Now, Pablo, if you give me any type of kickback about Zoom, I'm gonna be like, no big deal. Here's what I can do. What time are you off work? I know you're at work right now. So what time are you off work? And you're like, 3:30. And I'm like, all right, cool. So here's what I can do. You and your wife are usually together about 4:30 or so. Is that fair?
Yeah, we are.
Cool. And I would say, so I'm going to give you guys a call back between about 4:30, 5 o'clock. Again, my name is Marisa Maggio. I'll send you over my licensing credentials. So I'm booking them one of two ways. I'm booking them either for the same day or the next day. So on Monday, when I'm dialing, I'm booking for Monday night and I'm booking for Tuesday because I don't want to push any type of telesale or virtual appointment out And I am predominantly booking my mortgage on Zoom on those IVR leads.
And what's your show rate, if you don't mind sharing that?
Yeah, so the reason why I got really and I finally like was like, wow, this all makes sense, right? Like everything that everybody says on the training is all true, right? It all comes back to that. Um, was my show rate was really bad when I would dial on, for example, Monday and book Tuesday, Wednesday. By Tuesday, I would have like 50% maybe show up. By Wednesday, I would have like 30, maybe 20, 30% show up. So I was like, okay, this is like shooting fish into like a barrel in like the worst way, right? Because I felt like I was killing all my leads. So what I realized was if you tell me, hey, I'm at work, it's like, hey, I'm at work too, no big deal, Pablo. So it only takes about 15 minutes to go through. Are you married, single, widowed, or divorced? That's the first thing I want to know, right? Because I need to know, does your spouse need to be there before I try to one call close you or book you for an appointment that, you know, your spouse might not be there for. So I'm always asking that first. And then from there, going ahead, and I am typically booking it. Now, if somebody says something to me like, why can't we do it right now? I mean, like, all right, I'm going for the one call close. You know what I
Of
mean?
course.
But again, like you said, we want to, you know, make sure we're playing our cards in the best way. And from what I found so far, booking those appointments, but making sure that they're not more than, you know, 24, 36 hours out is key.
If you don't mind me asking, I want to ask, because a lot of times people say, man, I need something to help me, send a reminder. Do you use anything like Calendly or a CRM of some sort or something that helps you? Because obviously, especially if you're just running through the numbers and you're really trying to book appointments for that same day or the day after, you want to fill your calendar as much as possible, but you can get lost with track of time and following up with everybody you're supposed to. Do you use anything that helps you navigate through all that so that your show rate also increases a little and it's like an assistant for you?
Yeah, so that was something I struggled with when I was transitioning like over to telesales because I've never used even like a ringy, a phone burner, like any automated dialer. I was kind of like, what is this? Like, and why do we have to do it? But it soon clicked, hey, this is why. The reminders, things of that sort. So Calendly is huge. It will send out a reminder, whether you want to send out 3 reminders or you want to send out, you know, I usually will just do the original message and then a reminder an hour before. I always say like if I was reminded an hour before, like I would show up or I would at least call, right? Like that I would at least reach out, right? So that's kind of what that looks like for me. And just utilize because in the beginning, or you know, just a week ago, I wasn't using anything. And what I realized was like, okay, wait, I talked to like 50 people last week and I booked them and like 10 of them showed or whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever the rate was. And like you said, people fall through the cracks. So when you're able to kind of just label that as no show or reset or revisit, you're able to just have automatic reminders going out. So sometimes you'll see you actually have inbound appointments coming in because you have people following up on that email like, hey, sorry I missed you on Saturday, you know, ABC happened, but that's because your follow-up email went out. So I think utilizing something in terms of Calendly, and if you sync it with like a ringy or, you know, phone burner or whatever it is that you use, is huge and is needed because it's almost like takes the place of an assistant at that point.
It's like the cheapest assistant you can hire, you know?
Literally.
Calendly is affordable.
That's right.
um,
That's right.
All right, cool. So, you've shared a lot of valuable information today, and the reason I kind of dug into mortgage protection is because obviously, we all know that mortgage protection is, a different type of lead, right? It's usually two working incomes in the home. They just bought a house. They're probably going to have some type of a checking account, right? Because they had to show proof. They have income. And I'm trying to get some more of my agents to get comfortable with working mortgage protection because I think it's a different type of lead than it is with final expense, right? So thanks for sharing all of that information because I think there was a lot of useful information in there. But I want to kind of just end with this. It's been awesome talking to you. I've already learned a lot from you.
And real quick, Pablo, I want to hit on one thing you just said, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
With
for
the
sure.
mortgage versus kind of like any other life lead, we want to remember like it's all conceptual selling, right? So like if someone fills out a final expense lead, we know that they're looking for whole life, or even if they don't know they're looking for it, that's what we're going to put them with, right? It's all a concept, right? Mortgage protection is a concept, right? So it's like if you know how to sell life insurance, you know how to sell mortgage protection coverage. Like you already know how to do it. So get yourself in front, buy some mortgage protection leads that are aged, get yourself in front of a couple people. I think you'll realize like, wow, this is not as hard as I thought it was going to be. And I've experienced that with a lot of my agents as well. So I just wanted to share that bubble.
It's true. It's like an intimidation, right? When they hear mortgage protection, they're intimidated because they're like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. But really, mortgage protection, I try to explain the same thing. It's just life insurance packaged differently. That's all it is.
Exactly.
So, that is important for them to know that it's not a special lead. It's just packaged a little different. But the caliber of clientele, again, they probably have a checking account. They have something to protect, right? So the intent is a little higher, in my opinion, and that's kind of why I say, hey, you should start transitioning into mortgage protection because, again, it's just life insurance. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't get scared of it. We're just packaging it a little differently.
Exactly.
But okay, so what advice can you give to anyone on this call as far as setting expectations, activity levels? Because we obviously have a mix of agents that are new and seasoned. What kind of advice can you share with everybody on today's call here?
Yeah, so what I would say, whether you're brand new or maybe you're in like a little bit of a slump, or maybe you're killing it. Like, if you're killing it, keep killing it. Keep trailblazing. But if you're not, move fast and break things. Like that's what you have to do. In this business, you're never gonna wake up one day and it's gonna be like, I know how to perfectly dial the phones until you just dial the phones. And you're like, wow, there's not a perfect way to do this. But there are some objections I can come back and say, right? And I think that just essentially feeling fast and moving forward is key. Now, if you're somebody and you're out there and you're like, well, I am feeling fast and I don't know what to do, you have to ask yourself some questions. Am I reaching out to people when I am feeling fast, right? Or am I just feeling fast in my second bedroom and nobody knows, right? Because if you don't reach out for help, like no one's gonna know that you need help. Like I can only reach out, Pablo, whoever can only reach out so many times, like, hey, Rami, how are things going? Right? It's like you gotta help your mentor see where you're at. And in terms of things, other pieces of advice I would give to any agent on this call today is when you're in front of your computer, when you have your leads in front of you, when you're getting into the car and going into the field, whatever that looks like for you, are you actually present with what you're doing, right? I know that there's been times where I didn't use, like, for example, like a dial tracker. Like some people don't use that. That's cool. I'm not mad at you. But like I have to use that because it's the only way for me to gauge where I'm actually at. Did I dial all day or did I take all day to dial? Right? There's two different ways to look at that. And I know that if I had not made in that given day at least 300 dials, I have zero, nothing I can call anybody and complain about. I could call myself and be like, hey, dude, you should have bought more leads so that you could make your 300 dials. But outside of that, it's like you have to just work the learning curve and remember that the worst you're ever going to be is right now. And if you don't move the learning curve or you just take too long and you're like getting stuck on like, what does Americo Eagle do? Like you're gonna know product knowledge. Chill. We love you. But get yourself in front of people because there's nothing like just taking action and moving forward. That's when you're gonna see change in yourself. But you could run the phone script with me, with Pablo, with whoever 1,000 times, but you're not gonna know what it feels like until you actually outbound call. Same thing, whether you're doing in-home or telesales, go out there and get uncomfortable. If you're not getting uncomfortable in this industry, especially in this industry, every single day, you're not growing. If you don't feel uncomfortable by the end of the day and you're like, okay, like that was a little uncomfortable, but I'm glad I did it, then you're not growing in the business. So move fast, break things, feel forward, and just remember those first 100 appointments are pretty much the worst you're ever going to be. So just get through them sooner than later. That's what I would say, Pablo.
Mic drop right there. Wow, that was good. Well, we all learned a lot. I know I did, and like I said, you couldn't have ended it any better. That advice is straight fire. I can appreciate everything, you taking time out of your day to share all this knowledge and wisdom with us. So with that, I'm not sure. Do we open up for questions? Or are we good to go? I think that's it.
Cool. Well, if anybody has any questions, always feel free to reach out to me. But thank you so much for having me on today, Pablo. I appreciate it. FFL SkyPoint, I appreciate all of you guys. And make it a great day.
Thank you. Thanks for joining,
care.
guys.
Bye, guys.